I wasn't sure what I expected when I rode up to my uncle's old ranch, but it sure as hell wasn't this. 2 buzzards circled overhead like they'd been doing it for weeks. The barn leaned harder than I remembered, and the house looked smaller like time had shrunk it out of spite. My boots crunched gravel as I dismounted, and the moment I pushed open the front door, I knew I wasn't alone. The smell hit first burnt beans, sour sweat, and something iron-like that prickled the back of my throat. I stepped into the kitchen and stopped cold. A woman stood barefoot in the center of the room, wearing a torn white dress smeared with dirt and dried blood. Her eyes, sharp and wide, locked onto mine. In her right hand she held a rusted kitchen knife, gripped low, blade pointed down, not like she was afraid, but like she'd already made peace with using it. "You're going to have sex with me," she said, voice flat as hammered tin. I didn't move, didn't speak. The saddlebag slipped from my shoulder and hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the dead house. She didn't even flinch. Behind her was a pile of blankets in the corner, cans stacked like soldiers along the wall, and scratch marks etched into the window frame like she'd been counting days or people. I raised my hands slowly. "Ma'am, I don't know who you think I am, but you're Fletcher Knox," she interrupted. "You're Marcus Knox's nephew. This place is yours now." I blinked. "How do you know that?" "Because I've been waiting, and because they're coming back tonight." The knife dipped slightly, like she'd made her point. She stepped back just enough to grab a stained curtain off the floor and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her whole body shook, but her eyes didn't waver. "I'm not crazy," she said, "and I'm not here to hurt you. But we don't have time to argue. I need them to believe we've been together." "Why?" I asked. She stared at the floor for a second, then looked back up. "Because it might keep them from killing you." That got my attention. "You want to run that by me again?" "They think I'm alone. That's part of the agreement. If they see I've taken up with someone, if I've been claimed, they might not press as hard. But if they find you here and think you're a stranger, or worse, a threat, who the hell are they?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Men who don't knock. Men who shot your uncle and made it look like fever. You think he just died out here? That's what they want you to think." I stared at her half-starved, scarred, holding her ground like a cornered wolf, and tried to make sense of anything. "I'm not asking you to touch me," she said, softer now. "I just need them to see it. The mess, the clothes, the way. We sit after." She broke off, jaw tight. "You got 5 minutes, then you decide. Stay and help, or take your saddlebag and ride. But if you stay, we do this my way." I should have walked. Any sane man would have, but I looked at the bullet hole patched in the window, the scuffed floor where boots had paced hard and fast, the fear in her voice and the will beneath it. Whoever she was, she hadn't been waiting for rescue, she'd been surviving, and something told me whatever killed my uncle wasn't finished yet. "All right," I said, stepping in. "Let's hear your plan." She nodded once, quick and tossed me a dirty shirt from the floor. "Then take off your boots," she said, "and muss up your hair. If you're going to play my man, you better look the part." 5 minutes later, I was sitting shirtless on the edge of the mattress, boots kicked into opposite corners of the room, my hair damp from the water she'd splashed on it to make me look sweaty and used. The curtain was strung back over the busted window, and she, Tabitha, or so she'd finally said, had wiped streaks of dirt on her neck and chest to make it look like we'd been rolling around together. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or throw up. Then came the hoofbeats. She froze mid-step and held up a finger. Her eyes went wide, not scared wide, but focused, like a hunted thing hearing the trap spring. "There's more than one," she whispered. 3, maybe 4. I reached for my revolver, but she grabbed my wrist hard. "No guns." "Not yet." She darted to the fireplace and pressed her palm against the wood paneling. With a click, a square section of wall popped inward. A hidey-hole. Now. She hissed. Inside. Quiet. We squeezed into the black space together, shoulder to shoulder, the wall clicking shut just as the porch creaked. Boots thudded. A fist slammed the door open. A voice spoke, deep and clipped with a foreign accent. German, maybe Prussian? My uncle had written about mercenaries before, but I thought it was exaggeration. Search everything, the voice said. Fast. The floorboards moaned with every step they took. I could hear furniture dragged, drawers dumped, glass breaking. I held my breath, heart pounding. Tabitha was stone still, her fingers gripping the fabric of my trousers like a lifeline. I'll tell them you were a hired hand, she whispered, lips barely brushing my ear. I'll say I brought you on to fix the fencing, and we got close. But if they see your name, if they find your bag, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. One of them called out, Boss. There's something here, saddlebag, new. Not hers. The voice that followed sent a cold shiver down my back. Bring it. The hidden panel gave no air. Every breath felt like breathing through burlap. I wanted to speak, to move, but I could barely blink. Tabitha's hand trembled once, then steadied. Again. She was breathing slow and shallow, like she'd done this before. A sharp crack upstairs, something being kicked open. Another man shouted. Letters upstairs under the mattress. My bag, my name, and what the hell was upstairs? Boots on the steps. Laughter. The boss said something in another language, then in English again. She won't get far. She always comes back. I looked at her in the dark. Her face was pale now, jaw locked. Whatever those letters were, they mattered more than anything she'd told me so far. Do we stay put? I mouthed. She shook her head. I listened. One of the men coughed. Another laughed again, but I wasn't listening for them. I was listening for her answer. Tabitha reached behind us and pressed something again. A soft click. A second panel shifted. She leaned close. If they take those letters, it's over. My mouth was dry. So what do we do? Then, outside the wall, something scraped. A spur, maybe. Too close. A pause? Boss? A man called out. Think I heard something. Tabitha sucked in a breath. We were out of time. I felt the tension hit her body before I even saw her move. One hand braced a hidden panel from within. The other gripped mine so tight my knuckles popped. Outside, footsteps creaked toward our wall. We weren't going to make it. Then a voice from upstairs interrupted everything. Hey, boss, you better see this. The boots near us paused, turned. The accented voice closer than before growled, What now? 2 sets of footsteps thudded up the stairs. We heard the murmuring of men. Something shuffled. Then a sharp snort of interest. Catherine Cross, the boss read aloud. So she is alive, Tabitha jerked. Not flinched, jerked, like her whole spine tried to leap away from that name. Didn't. No, she'd changed it, the voice continued. So careful about covering her trail, but not careful enough to burn her past. A man laughed low. Think she's sweet on this new fella? I say we leave it untouched. She'll come back. They always do for love letters. He said it like it was a joke, but the way Tabitha's hand let go of mine made my stomach turn. Her whole body slumped, just a little. They weren't from a lover, she whispered, breath shaking. They were from Marcus. He knew something. The men downstairs were already moving again. The one called Boss gave orders in clipped German. Pack the letters. Leave the bag. Burn the rest except the bed. That we leave messy. Why not torch the place? Someone asked. Because if she's alive, she'll come back for them. When she does, we'll be waiting. Tabitha clenched her teeth so hard I could hear it. Outside the wall, wood scraped. Something heavy dragged. I need those letters, she whispered again, but now her voice had dropped its tremor. She sounded cold, hollow. The front door slammed shut. Boots thundered off the porch toward the barn, and then I heard something. Worse than footsteps. The soft metallic click of a match being struck. She shoved open the side panel. Light spilled into our crawl space from a narrow shaft behind the fireplace. Out, she hissed. Go. They're setting a fuse. What about the letters? I asked. She paused, eyes glassy. They're gone, she said. For now. But if they know my name, we don't have long. I crawled out into the smoky hallway. The air smelled sharp sulfur. Maybe in her feet were already padding silently to the back door, but I couldn't stop thinking about the name Catherine, cross and how she'd never said it before. Tabitha, I muttered. Or is it Catherine? She froze, hand on the doorknob. I buried Catherine when I buried Marcus, she said without turning. Now help me keep her dead, or we both will be. The sound of distant hooves echoed again, fading this time. They weren't burning the house. After all, they were letting it rot, bait Dot, and we were the flies they wanted buzzing back. The house groaned under the weight of its own silence. We crept upstairs, eyes darting from shadow to shadow, listening for anything left behind, any creak of a boot, any cough in the dust, but they were gone. The door stood wide open, hinges cracked. My saddlebag lay in the corner where they'd dumped it, picked through but left behind, as promised. But the mattress was shredded, sheets torn, letters gone. Only the faintest smell of smoke lingered, a threat unlit. We have to move, Tabitha said. Now. She led me to a back wall I hadn't noticed earlier, next to the chimney shaft. She dropped to her knees and yanked back a warped floorboard, revealing a space no larger than a cupboard. What is this? I asked. Old escape tunnel. Marcus made it after the war. Said someday it might be needed again. She crawled inside and gestured for me to follow. The tunnel dropped beneath the house and curved sharply, leading to a narrow hatch that opened up under the back overhang of the roof. Just beyond it, I saw the top of the water barrel. They'll double back eventually, she said. We jump straight in. You serious? Unless you feel like getting shot on the porch. Before I could answer, she'd slipped out the hatch and dangled her legs over the edge. I scrambled after her, chest pressed to shingles slick with dust. The drop looked further now. The barrel was a rusted thing half full with rainwater, and likely wood rot. Count of 3, she whispered. 1, 2. The hatch exploded behind us. There. Gunfire cracked the air. Wood splintered near my hand. I dove. The fall knocked the wind from my lungs, and the water hit like a frozen punch to the ribs. I surfaced gasping, head ringing. Tabitha was already out, hauling herself up the side and limping into the brush. I scrambled after her. A bullet thunked into the barrel just as I ducked behind it. Bark cracked off trees. More shouts. Come on. She hissed, dragging me by the shirt collar. We tore through the thicket, soaking wet, clothes clinging like second skins. She ran like someone with pain stitched into her bones, but she didn't slow. Neither did I. We hit the creek. She dropped to her knees and plunged her hands into the mud, rubbing it up her arms, then turned and smeared it across my chest. They'll use dogs, she panted. This'll mask the scent. Stay in the water as long as you can. I nodded, chest heaving, and followed her into the slow-moving creek. The current was shallow, cool, and smelled like moss and memory. I watched the house fade behind us, the only home I'd known in this world, now a lure for a trap. Tabitha didn't cry. She didn't scream. But her breath hitched once when she looked back. That was all I had left of Marcus, she said softly. I didn't know what to say, so I said the truth. I believe you. And for the first time since we met, she looked at me like maybe I wasn't a mistake after all. We moved upriver for half a mile, soaked to the bone, until we found a fallen tree to crawl beneath. The sun was starting to slide west, casting long gold streaks through the canopy, but the chill in my spine wasn't from the water. I turned to her. You said Marcus didn't die from fever. She nodded slowly. Her face looked older now, not by years, but by truth too long buried. They poisoned him, then paid the town doctor to write down pneumonia and leave it at that. Why? Because he got close, too close. He kept notes, letters, receipts, shipments he saw coming through the pass that didn't match the manifests. Ammo, mostly. Long crates meant for freight wagons, but moved under cover of night. He thought maybe a local gang was gearing up for a fight. And Weiss? I asked. She exhaled through her nose, bitter. Henrik Weiss called himself Weiss, like he thought it sounded clever. Prussian bastard with clean boots and dirtier money. He worked for someone bigger. Marcus didn't know who, but he was close to finding out. He wrote it all down, and then she trailed off. I said nothing. She didn't need my words. She just needed me to listen. She pulled up her sleeve, showed me the faint, round scar on her forearm. They tried to kill me, too. Left me for dead outside the old mine road. Marcus found me, brought me in, hid me. Said if anything happened to him, I had to get the letters to the marshals in Denver. But now Weiss has them, I said. Yes, she said. And that's not all. Those letters mentioned someone called the General. The word settled like ash in the air. We don't know who that is? She shook her head. Could be a real general. Could be a Cody name. But Marcus believed it reached past our town, maybe into the army or politics. Someone was arming militias off the books, and your uncle figured too much of it out. I leaned back against the tree trunk and stared at the dusk sky. My whole life I'd thought Marcus was a cranky old drunk with too many stories and too little patience. Turns out he was trying to save lives, maybe whole towns. You said the marshal in Denver? I asked. She nodded. I looked at her soaked, trembling but lit from inside with something stronger than hate. I'm going to get those letters back, I said. And we're not running. We're going to find a way to burn this all down. She blinked, surprised. You're serious? Dead serious. I was a drifter yesterday. Today I've got a reason. That makes me dangerous, she smiled, just barely. And stupid. Stupid and dangerous, I said. Bad combination for a man with a gun. Her eyes soft. All right then, but we'll need to move fast. If Weiss is heading toward his camp, we'll have one shot to get ahead. I stood and held out my hand. You lead, I'll follow. As we started up the ravine, boots squishing, guns damp, I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from anything. I was running toward it. We reached the high ridge just after midnight. The wind had picked up, dry and sharp, carrying wood smoke and the scent of stew. Weiss had made camp in the old Prospector Basin flat land. Good water, surrounded by pine on 3 sides and rock. On the 4th, clever, but not clever enough. From our vantage, we could see the flicker of firelight below. 4 tents, 6 horses. A single large canvas shelter near the fire where Weiss sat, alone, reading by lantern. The others, his men, were spread out wide in a circle, rifles in hand, backs to him, guarding the camp like they were guarding treasure. Letters are in. There, Tabitha whispered, pointing to the tent. He always reads them when he thinks he's won. And the men? 2 south, 1 west, 1 pacing east. If we wait for him to sleep, he won't, I said. Not tonight. He's on edge. He knows someone's watching. She frowned. Then we'll make him look the wrong way. I turned to her. Meaning? I give him a reason to move some noise, maybe a campfire accident. While they're distracted, you go in. That's risky. She looked me dead in the eye. We've been living on risk since the day we met. We slid back from the edge and began our crawl around the rim, picking our way down through the brush until we reached a slope overlooking the horses. From there we could count the guards. 4. No more. I pointed to a clearing about 20 yards behind Weiss's tent. There. You set the distraction. I come in from the creek side. 10 minutes, she said. If I'm not back. Don't say that, I interrupted. She just gave me a look. Not fear. Acceptance. And then she was gone. I crouched low, circling wide toward the creek that curved behind the camp. The night was quiet, except for the occasional snort from a horse or the faint rattle of a coffee pot. My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs. Then came the sound, a sharp crack, followed by a low whoosh. Someone shouted. Fire. Back line. Men rushed toward the flames, guns half lowered. 2 peeled off in a sprint. 1 fired into the air, yelling orders. The 4th stayed by the horses. Unsure. Perfect. I crept behind the tents, knife in one hand, pistol in the other. I reached the flap of Weiss's shelter and paused. The canvas glowed dimly from the lantern inside. His silhouette moved pacing now, agitated, then he turned. Our eyes met through the gap. He raised his pistol. I dove in low, gun swinging up. His shot cracked wide. Mine didn't. Weiss stumbled backward, clutching his side, blood soaking his vest. He tried to lift the gun again, but a second shot dropped him hard. I stood over him, chest heaving. "Knox," he gasped, mouth red. "You're too late. He's already coming." "Who?" I asked Dot. He coughed once. "The general?" Then his eyes rolled back, and he stilled. Tabitha burst through the back of the tent, face flushed with heat and smoke. She took one look at Weiss, then bent to search him with practiced hands. "Letters," she said. "Maps, journal, names." She held up a worn envelope, marked in my uncle's handwriting. My name was on the front. She stared at it for a long beat, then handed it to me. Dot. We heard the others yelling in the distance, trying to put out the fire. "We need to go," I said. She nodded. "We've got what we need. Let's finish this." We didn't run. We disappeared, Dot by dawn. We were 20 miles out, tucked in a pine hollow near the Mail Route junction. Tabitha moved like a soldier, but slower now. Her side was scraped raw from a fall during the fire, and her right hand trembled. When she tried to load her revolver, still, she wouldn't rest. Not until every paper was laid out in front of us, maps, lists, copied letters in Marcus's handwriting, coded schedules, and a ledger filled with names and dollar amounts. One of the names, underlined twice, read, Jen, Thaddeus Prout. Camp Larimore minus 5,000 rounds. I sat back on my heels. That's it. That's who Weiss worked for. Not just worked, she muttered. Followed. Protected. Marcus wrote that Prout's organizing something bigger, arming breakaway groups in 3 territories, planning to carve out land for some kind of private dominion. My hands clenched, and no one stopped him. Not? Yeah, she said, but with this they will. She bundled the documents carefully into oilskin, then turned to me. Denver's still 2 days out, but there's a telegraph stop in Hollis. We ride there, wire everything to Marshal Carson, and let the law burn this from the top down. I nodded. And if Hollis is crawling with Prout's men? She looked up. Then we sent it from the post ourselves. With or without backup. We packed fast, stole 2 horses from Weiss's camp, and rode east under the cover of cloud. By noon, we saw the Hollis depot in the distance, little more than a telegraph shack, a general store, and a 10-star sheriff who looked too young to shave. I walked in, hat low, envelope under my coat. The clerk looked up, blinked once. "Need to send a wire to Denver Marshal's office," I said. Code red. "Got documents to follow." "Proof of identity?" he asked. I handed him Marcus's letter. He read the name, then stopped cold. "Marcus. Knox was your uncle?" I nodded. Dot. He stood up. "Then this wire goes out priority." While the keys clicked, Tabitha stood watch on the porch, hand on her hip, scanning the road for riders. None came. 20 minutes later, the reply clicked back. Marshal. Carson en route. ETA 30 hours. Secure materials. Do not engage. Tabitha read it twice. "That's it then," she whispered. "No," I said. "That's just the start." By the next afternoon, riders thundered into Hollis, badges, rifles, and dust-choked boots. Marshal Carson himself climbed off the lead. Horse, a grizzled man with a scar over one eye and no patience for politics. We handed him the letters, told him everything. He didn't blink once. An hour later, orders were flying. Arrests launched across the territory. The depot hummed with telegraphs as agents in neighboring states moved in. And when Carson turned to us, voice gravel thick, he said, "You two just cracked open the largest domestic conspiracy since the war." Tabitha didn't smile. But her shoulders dropped for the first time in days. "You'll testify?" Carson asked. I nodded. Every word. As the sun dipped low, we rode back to the ranch, what was left of it. The walls still stood, the roof mostly. It would take months to rebuild, but we stood in the doorway, side by side, as the wind rustled the broken fence and the silence finally felt like peace, not threat. Tabitha took my hand. "Catherine," she said softly. "My name's Catherine again." "Then I'm glad to meet you properly this time," I said, smiling. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and for once neither of us had to run. A month later the world changed again. We were sitting on the rebuilt porch, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs, when a courier rode up with news from Denver. Marshall Carson's case had gone to the federal circuit, and the evidence we gave Marcus's. Letters, the coded shipments, the maps had triggered a cascade of takedowns, 27 arrests, 5 resignations in military offices. And one Thaddeus Prout, former general, now in shackles, on his way to stand trial. We didn't cheer. We just sat there, letting it soak in. The war Marcus had died trying to stop was finally over. The courier left with our thanks and a fresh canteen. I watched Catherine trace a finger along the porch rail, deep in thought. "What are you thinking?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "That? Your uncle was right about the stars." "What do you mean?" She nodded to the sky above the hills. "He always said if a man lived right, the stars would line up for him, even if it took years." I looked out across the land, our land now. The barn was standing again, half painted. The corral was empty, but we'd fix that come spring. We were rebuilding with blistered hands and sore backs, and neither of us would have wanted it any other way. "You ever think about leaving?" I asked Dot. She leaned her shoulder into mine. "I already left once. I lost everything doing it. This is where I put roots." A breeze lifted her hair. I tucked a strand behind her ear, and she didn't flinch. We got married that winter, quietly. No preacher, no paper. Just us under a sky so wide it made your heart ache. Catherine planted a rose bush by Marcus's grave. Said he deserved something beautiful for what he gave. Sometimes folks ride past and ask if we heard about the woman who took down a Prussian gun runner with nothing but a knife and a handful of letters. We just nod. They don't need to know everything. Let the stories stretch. We've got each other, a patch of dirt with our name on it, and peace that cost more than most folks will ever understand. And somewhere out there, in the dark corners of this country, I know there's still men like Weiss. Still men like Prout, hiding behind uniforms and titles. But if they come back, well, they won't be the first to underestimate a woman with nothing to lose. And a rancher who's done running